Black people aren't supposed to defend ourselves. Now we talk about the words. Let's talk about the physicality. Y'all heard of the Second Amendment? Somebody type 2A. Here in America, we treat the right to bear arms like a sacred right. You think Jesus came down and wrote it in the Constitution himself. Somebody type hallelujah in the chat room. See, the Second Amendment is sacred until black people use it. And see, that's the part that people don't want to talk about. Are you learning something? See, America loves to talk about guns, freedom, self-defense, and the right to bear arms. But historically, when black people exercised that same right, the country got nervous. Suddenly the conversation changed. Suddenly gun rights weren't so absolute. Suddenly armed self-defense became dangerous, threatening, and unacceptable. That's exactly what happened with the Black Panther Party in California. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was founded in 1966 in Oakland, California by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. The whole point was that black communities were being over-policed, abused, and brutalized, and nobody was protecting us. So the Panthers decided they'd monitor the police. Somebody tried to keep an eye on them. They decided they'd keep an eye on them. We're going to watch y'all. Somebody type watching y'all. We're going to keep an eye on you all. They followed the police, they observed the traffic stops in the black communities, and they watched how the officers treated black people in Oakland. And then they did it while openly carrying guns, because at the time, California law, like many other states, allowed people to openly carry loaded firearms in public as long as they weren't concealed and weren't brandished unlawfully. And that's the part people leave out. See, the Panthers weren't just running around randomly with guns. They were using the law as it existed. They were exercising their 2A. They studied the law. They knew the rules. They knew how far they had to stand. I think it was like 10 feet away from the police. They knew what they could say. They knew what they could carry. And they were making a political point. If white Americans can claim the right to arm self-defense, then black Americans claim the right too. And that scared California. And guess what happened? Changed the law. In 1967, the Republican Assembly, Don Mulford, introduced what became known as the Mulford Act. The bill was aimed at stopping black people from openly carrying loaded firearms in public without a permit. Everybody knew it. They knew what he was driving at. It was aimed at the Black Panthers and their armed police patrols in Oakland, California. And the Panthers were not the only people in California who could openly carry, but they were the people whose open carry suddenly made lawmakers uncomfortable. I thought we loved 2A. Then came the moment that made history. On May 2nd, 1967, about 30 armed black men, Black Panthers, went to the California State Capitol in Sacramento to protest the Mulford Act. They walked into the Capitol carrying rifles and shotguns, and Bobby Seale read a statement against the bill. And the Panthers' message was clear. The government was trying to disarm black people because black people had started using the same Second Amendment rights white people claim for themselves as holy. And that's why people say black men stormed the California Capitol. They didn't go there hiding. They didn't sneak in. They showed up in public, armed and disciplined and political. They were saying you can't praise the Second Amendment when white people use it and then rewrite the rules when black people use it. And what happened next proves the point. Governor Ronald Reagan, who later became a conservative hero of the Republican Party, supported the Mulford Act. He signed it into law in 1967. And Reagan reportedly said there's no reason for citizens to be carrying loaded weapons in the street, and later said the Mulford Act wouldn't create hardship for the honest citizen. And that's a long way from the modern conservative talking point that gun rights are absolute, isn't it? It was convenient. And it wasn't just Reagan. The National Rifle Association supported the Mulford Act. Got to get these guns out of these N-words' hands. Damn it. Hell no. Well, what about our Second Amendment rights? Second Amendment be damned. We got to get these guys out of here. Yeah. Yeah. See? See, that lesson is hard to miss. Gun rights were treated differently when black people were the ones carrying the gun. So when people say the Second Amendment was gutted when black people showed up at the California Capitol, that's what they mean. The legal right to open carry existed. Black men used it. And once black men used it in a visible, organized political way, California moved to restrict that law. That's how the caste system works. Because again, black people are not allowed to defend themselves. You understand? Are y'all seeing the correlation? Black people are, this is the unwritten rule. This ain't law. This is the unwritten social structure. This is social caste system. You learning something? See, the country says black people should obey the law. The Panthers obeyed the law. The country says black people should know their rights. The Panthers knew their rights. The country says black people should protect their communities. The Panthers tried to protect their communities. But once black people use the same laws and the same rights everybody else claimed, the system changed the rules. That's why this history matters to the larger point. Shout out to Urban Eagle. Black people aren't allowed to defend themselves the same way other Americans are. If white men stand outside the state capitol with rifles, and I'm not talking about the California Capitol, I'm talking about, let's say Washington, D.C., right? They start talking about liberty. They start jumping in there looking for legislators. They call them patriots. Matter of fact, they'll set up $1 billion slush fund and pardon as many of them as they can and give them an apology. You'll get an apology from the president of the United States. If black men do it, lawmakers call an emergency and rewrite the Constitution. That's exactly what happened. Now, there's a reason people talk about the Black Panther Party for self-defense. Y'all know what happened to them? What happened to the Black Panther Party, family? Are we learning? Some of them became lawyers, some of them became legislators, but a lot of them went to jail. A lot of them still in jail. See? See, the Black Panther Party is easier for America to turn into a warning. They put out movies every now and then. They talk about how they went up in that boy's house and shot him with his girlfriend. And the message becomes, see, this is what happens when black people try to defend themselves against violence. The image scared America. So America turned the Panthers into a symbol of dangerous black militancy. But the other armed black groups are more inconvenient because they don't fit that simple story. The Black Panther Party didn't even create the Black Panther name or symbol. Did y'all know that? Did you all know that the Black Panther, that Black Panther symbol wasn't even made in Oakland, California? Shout out to Next Level. Did you know that? Who knew that? That Black Panther symbol. Well, let me say this. I think it's called the Lowndes County Freedom Organization created that symbol. You see? And there was some people from SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coalition. Their organizers carried the symbol to the wider Black Power movement. So in 1965, you had SNCC organizers like Stokely Carmichael, who actually later on became the Black Panther Party's honorary prime minister. He was working with the residents of Lowndes County, Alabama. It's a rural black belt county known for very violent white resistance and voter suppression. And black residents there formed an independent political party called the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, the LCFO, because many black voters couldn't read well. If you can't read, what? Right? Now, Alabama election law required parties to use visual symbols on the ballot because they knew folk couldn't read. So the white Democrats, because they couldn't read either, they used the white rooster. So the white Democrat, they couldn't read, they used the white rooster. The LCFO, the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, they used the Black Panther. So when you saw the Black Panther, that's who you voted for. SNCC own history says that the LCFO chose the Panther because as a local founder, a man named John Hewlett explained, the Black Panther doesn't bother anybody. Somebody type mind your business. The Black Panther is minding his business. But when you push, it pushed back. You see? And it finally comes out and it destroys whatever's in front of it. That was the message. Black people weren't looking for trouble, but they weren't helpless either. And see, that group used the Black Panther as a symbol of Black political power and strength, dignity, and self-defense. And then Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale and the Oakland Black Panthers, they later adopted that symbol and carried it into a different kind of movement.